The show became extremely popular, and we had tons amount of youth on with different moderators, myself, Nattu, and at times we also had others that would take the lead.
Kind of interactive discussion, so make sure to leave comments and feedback. Is there any interesting topics that you think should be raised? So for our viewers, go in and make sure to leave a comment in the comment section so we can pick that up.
Which is being raised up Eritrea. We might have had the luxury of going there quite often, but someone who was born and raised there, did your Hagara Gulglot there, was a model for someone who's coming like me.
I spent most of my childhood in the United States, but soon after I turned 16, we moved to Eritrea, back to Eritrea, and so I finished my junior and senior year of high school there.
Kubrat Samatana, Shara listener, dear viewers, welcome back to another show. I'm here together with Nadia Mikael, Ftawa Mahari, Rahel Sabhatu, and me, Nathaniel Amaniel. Last week, we spoke in Swedish, but as we said, we'll be back with another English installment, and also a continuation of we spoke last week. But as an introduction in English, I thought we would talk a little bit about how this show came to be. We spoke about it in Swedish, but for our international listeners, we thought we would repeat it in English. This show is a continuation of a show that existed before, but I'm going to leave it over to someone who was there from the beginning, Said Nadia, to kind of explain a bit about the history, and how it evolved to be and restarted today.
Thank you for kicking it back to me. Dmtsi was a radio program that started back in 2009. The main goal with the show was to sort of have topics that are directly linked to the youth, or topics that are important to the youth, and also topics that we could discuss together during the show that would give a chance for the parents to get to know their children a bit better. Things that maybe the youth were not comfortable enough discussing within their households. We pretty much discussed in the radio show, and at one point or another, that show became more popular amongst the elderly generation because we managed to bring up topics that they never heard their children talk about within their own walls. So the show became extremely popular, and we had tons amount of youth on with different moderators, myself, Nattu, and at times we also had others that would take the lead. So it was an important show, specifically here in Gothenburg, and I think we are very happy. I think you guys would agree with me to be able to do this on this level this time around, doing it both in Swedish and in English for international listeners. That was just a brief summary of how it all came about a few years ago.
Yeah. For anyone that didn't listen to last week's episode, I wish, or I hope that everybody go back and at least watch the video, because we show pictures, videos from back when it started in 2009 until 2013-14. I mean, at that time, everybody was much younger. So, as Nadia said, the idea is kind of to continue on what we did back then, to a much wider audience, raising topics that concern the youth today. Um, and one thing that we're hoping to do is by hopefully in the future, we'll see. But right now, we're trying to do it twice a month. Hopefully, we'll try to do it more often. The idea is to, um, bring forward Eritrean youth who are models for other Eritrean youth topics that concern us. And by this forum, we'll hope to, give you interesting and entertaining shows. And anyone want to add to that?
No, I
No?
think I think you summarized it well. Just to add a little bit, maybe this is also an kind of interactive discussion. So make sure to leave comments and feedback. Is there any interesting topics that you think should be raised? So for our viewers, go in and make sure to leave a comment in the comment section so we can pick that up. But
Yes.
in general, I think this will be something kind of down to earth, people to people discussion with guests and so on, and addressing current affairs that is interesting for all the Eritrean youths.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So last week, one of the topics we had was Eritrean identity in diaspora. Um, and what I wanted to start off with today was with our guest who wasn't there, or I guess our co-host that wasn't in the show last week. For someone who was born in the diaspora, raised up Eritrea, um, I wanted to start with you to kind of give us a lead into the topic today. You share something that both Nadia and Fatawi and me don't share, which is being raised up Eritrea. We might have had the luxury of going there quite often, but someone who was born and raised there, did your Hagara Gulglot there, was a model for someone who's coming like me from diaspora. If you could a little bit talk about your history and kind of how you find your own how you found your own Eritrean identity being raised up Eritrea.
Yeah, thank you. Well, just to correct you a bit, I actually wasn't born in Eritrea. Just like many people, because of the situation where many Eritreans were forced to leave the country due to the armed liberation struggle and the various atrocities that was happening inside the country. I was actually born in Saudi Arabia, and at the age of 2, my mom took me and my brothers to the United States. So I had spent most of my childhood in the United States, but soon after I turned 16, we moved to Eritrea, back to Eritrea, and so I finished my junior and senior year of high school there, and continued to go to university. So the real growing up actually did happen in Eritrea. But my childhood was mostly in the United States. And yeah, so I remember, especially before independence, especially like around 1988, 1999, when the EPLF started to really, send out or create, should I call it promotional material? For us, it was mostly came in this VHS cassettes, where we would, you know, see these videos and come to understand, like, okay, that's an Eritrea, because we would ask our parents, would ask my mom, my aunt, my uncle. I remember this as if it was yesterday. I was curious about why the women would sing in such high pitch, right? Like the smera, like it would be like really high pitch. and I didn't understand what that was about. And from my aunt told me, it's like, how, at church or at when the women are singing the opera, they sing like la, like she had to give me these type of comparisons for me to understand that this is how, things were done in Eritrea. I remember especially like how, 1990, one of the first and only times I think that anything about Eritrea was broadcasted in the United States was about what we call Kibset. After the liberation fighters liberated Massawa, the Derg regime came and had bombarded parts of Batset, Walet, the Nishti Batset, Abe Batset, whatever. And that was also one of the, the first things that I also, got to learn about what was going on in Eritrea and things like that. I also, it just so happened my grandparents were visiting us in 1990, 1991 as well. So a lot of like cultural things, how to read Tigrinya, things related to religion. I also had a lot of these influences. And of course, 1991, when independence came, things also had really opened up for everybody, really to understand and celebrate what it means to be Eritrean. And to be Eritrean at that time meant to have been a part of a people who, after 30 years of armed struggle, end up being victorious. So yeah, that's. I remember those times vividly.
But before you went to Eritrea, was there any sense of community around you that kind of, gave you, a broader sense of like, oh, there's, other Eritreans like me, especially before Natsanet. I can imagine it might have been as strong as, the conditions I was raised in after Natsanet.
There was always before, all the, community members, we were children, so we weren't really directly involved in what they were doing, but there was so much, awareness raising, fundraising to help those in need in Eritrea, through, relief. There was a lot of things going on. And then afterwards, too, there was some sense of community, of course. But if I may say, even if there was, other Eritreans around, other families, community events, Gwaila, like, these different things that we would go to, the United States being a multicultural society and always kind of been considered just being Black, there was also some type of internal, I remember having this internal conversations with myself, like, so I'm not African American, but I'm African, and what does that make me in this context? I remember like African American kids in asking me, where am I from? Like, why is your name? Where does it come from? In fact, even commenting on my looks because they thought that I looked different, like than compared to other African Americans. And I also, in that context, I remember being very interested in the African American civil rights movement, right? Because every February you have Black History Month. You learn about Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, all of them. I used to do a lot of reading in regards to that. When I got a little bit older, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and that also had this big imprint on me because I said, like, I can relate a bit more to Malcolm X than I can to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Especially at the time, he was always considered like this complete like pacifist. He wasn't fighting for his, but I was able to connect the Eritrean identity with Malcolm X's struggle to bring about the the rights of African Americans, and think like, kind of like this. I already had some type of, I think, revolutionary spirit going on there, and then of course the influence or the just to know that Eritrean women were also freedom fighters. That was also very. There was very few books for me to read when as a child in the United States about Eritrea, because big chunk of my childhood, Eritrea didn't exist as a country. It was always written about in the context of Ethiopia. But one of the best things that I remember experiencing when I went to Eritrea and started high school at the Red Sea Comprehensive Red Sea Secondary School, that they had like a lot of books about Eritrea. And so after school, I would go there and I would read all these books and read so much about the role of Eritrean women during the liberation struggle, how they basically went from kitchen to the field, how they participated in so many different aspects of life. It's not just like freedom fighters as such, but also like in regards to public administration, nutrition, helping, children, education, what we call Dmtsierrawyan, the revolutionary school, or just, going to the adetat, right? The elderly women, and trying to increase their own political consciousness. So it all kind of flows in that way, right? I had some aspects of it. I was learning about it in some shape or way or form while in the United States, and then coming to Eritrea, I got to really dive in, and I haven't turned back since.
I was thinking. I mean, this goes both to Nadia and Fatawi, but I'm thinking I'm going to start with Fatawi because different from me and Nadia, you're born in what we would consider a small. Although you're raised in what we consider to be a small village, Elmhult. I mean, kind of. Is there something that you can relate to when it comes to Rahel's story? Kind of, the pre-Natsnet. And I mean, there's big difference between United States and Sweden. Is there something that you can kind of see has similarities to your identity building as a kid?
No, I mean, it's two completely different journeys. I was actually born in Eritrea, and came to Sweden like less than a year before Natsnet. But I was a kid. I didn't remember Natsnet. When I came here, I was 6 years old. But it was a big contrast because I came from and when we say Eritrea, I was in Hagereseb. I was not in Asmara. I was out there with the cows and goats and all of that. That was my daily routines. So I would be what's called a goat herd kind of. So I came directly from that to Sweden, which was a big difference. I remember. I don't remember it, but I remember the older people telling me when I came, and I saw snow for the first time, and I didn't understand what was happening. So it was the small things, but of course, coming straight from Eritrea, we only spoke Tigrinya at home, of course, until I learned Swedish. Everything was Eritrea. I mean, it takes time to adjust. It takes time to not let go, but to kind of realize that you are now in both in both cultures. So everything was Eritrea. Speaking Eritrea, Tigrinya. I even knew Amharinya when I came, but that was quickly forgotten when I learned Swedish. But I wouldn't say there's not so specific memories of Eritrea when I came here as Rahel has. But it was, of course, it's a struggle because when we came to that small village, they didn't have a lot of immigrants. We were I think we were the second wave. They had some Latin American people before us, and then it was us and the Latin American people. There were maybe 5 families or so. So I was the only one with African or immigrant descent in my classes, in my football team, and everything. So from that aspect, of course, you struggle a little bit with the identity and really trying to figure out who am I and where's my place in this. So I think up until somewhere in high school, it was not that much focus on what was what. At home, it was really clear that we were Eritreans. It was nothing else. But when we were out, of course, we were a few Eritreans that were in around my age that I hung around with. But the Eritrean identity was not fully that strong. We spoke Swedish when we were outside. So I think it was when I started to become around 19, 20, when I really started going back to Ertra, that my identity also got more clearer. My identity in me was clear, but now I was more um, external about it as well.
Okay.
So two
Well,
completely different journeys.
yeah, definitely. And to
Uh,
Nadia, huh?
no, I was just gonna say, I think maybe what was maybe like a secondary question behind Natnael's question, besides like mine and your journey being different, to find yourself in in a country where you stand out. Were there any type of ways? I mean, besides the community, besides what's in your house, were you able to identify in other aspects, like in the classroom, for instance? If you're the only the immigrant for a lot of those times, then how were you able then to kind of negotiate with yourself, your
No, but
identity?
yeah, our identity was strong. We had Eritrean associations. It's still a very strong association. Eritrean Skåne. We had mother tongue classes in our school. So the municipality actually paid one parent to come there, and then they would take us from all classes and just group us into one classroom, and then we would have the mother tongue
Mm,
what's called class. So it was always there. It was just that I didn't really have, because I was a little bit wild when I was young as well. So I didn't have I didn't have anyone that I could feel like I was a group with in that sense.
Yeah.
It was a little bit later. Well, let's just say I had some time to think and realize things about myself, and uh, I mean, I've always been interested in Tigrinya music and Tigrinya movies. I used to be really into reggae once upon a time, and
mm,
and Haile Selassie and all that. They was always praising Haile Selassie, and so I really was like, but how is this? And I mean, it's not all of us that has a good picture of the legacy. Of course, it's a monarch,
mm,
a nice icon for Africa and so on. So of course, there's nothing bad in that. But I mean, it was a struggle going on, armed struggle going on, and so on. So I started digging in, like, how does all of this connect to me? Started reading up a lot, and soon I came to realize, because I started going back in history. So what does Nugus Nagasi mean?
mm,
Where does this come from? Going even further back, what was Midr Bahari? What was Axiom? What was this? And that's when I started to realize, like, I'm Black excellence, and that gave me some more motivation to be more, how it's called, outspoken and more external about my identity. So it came when I started realizing things. But fitting in, I mean, it was a small village. We didn't really see each other different until we came up until maybe seventh class. That's when we started to see that, okay, wait, we're not quite the same. Up until that, I was only hanging with the Swedish people, be there first in the morning when we have summer breaks and so on. They were at our home. They would
mm,
always say, I smell onion. That was something that always haunted me when I was little. But when we started realizing that, I think that's when we started forming the immigrant group, because then we had, after the war in Yugoslavia, a lot of Yugoslavian people also coming, and we were mostly Eritreans and Yugoslavian people. So then we became an immigrant group. But I still didn't feel like I did have much, in common with them. So my search was still going on, and then I found myself.
As everybody does at the end. I mean, with
Yeah,
enough community and enough knowledge, as everybody goes through their own journey in diaspora.
yeah.
But for Nadia, I know we're raised similarly in the same community, but different times. Not really that bad, but different times.
No, really. Different times.
Well, watch yourself now, nothing.
No, I mean, kind of the same questions to you. I mean, yeah, you're a bit older than me. You got to kind of see the Eritrean community, being raised in that before Net and after. Yeah, kind of your journey through just finding your own identity in Angere Yotobori.
Yeah, no, it's actually interesting because last week when we did the show in Swedish, I spoke a lot about like my inner crisis that I had, if you remember, like, thinking that I had my period of thinking that I was Swedish, Eritrean, and like no one could tell me anything else. But what is interesting now is that you brought up the period before independence. And, I grew up in Bologna Festival. That's where my parents took me yearly before independence. I was the little girl that used to dance on the stage, not knowing what they were singing, but I was, singing along and dancing and whatnot. So that the culture had already been strongly embedded in me at a very young age, because I saw my grandparents and I saw my parents, and that was sort of passed on. But what is also interesting maybe to mention along with that, along with love in general, sometimes comes fear. And my father moved to Eritrea right after independence. So naturally, right in, I think 92 was the first time that I went to Eritrea with my younger brother and my father. And my dad started talking about moving to Eritrea. And when he said that, I was like, I don't think I really can live here, I remember seeing specifically, they don't have Liseberg. Liseberg is like the biggest amusement park that we have in Scandinavia. Like, things that were very important to children. And I remember clearly in 92, my father forcing me and my brother to eat onions raw. And when he started talking about moving to Eritrea, the image I got in my head was eating onions every day. So I was about, what was I? I was 7 the first time my father started talking about moving to Eritrea. And I was thinking, I cannot live here. I'm yet not in love with this country or this place that is pretty much foreign to me. I know that I'm from here, but I cannot see myself living here. So that's something that we did not, like, that I didn't touch upon last week, but that's also an interesting part of that story where, where I now identify myself as an Eritrean who was born in Sweden, but the time when I was younger, when I couldn't even see myself, living in this country that I now love so dearly and so much. It's been a very, long journey to get to the point where I am now. So going from not saying that I absolutely don't want to live here. I remember sending my father letters saying that he needs to rethink this idea of moving the entire family to Eritrea. And he still has those letters, and it's so interesting to see. And even the fact that I then actually ended up living in Eritrea for 3.5 years. The journey is interesting. I believe I'm probably not the only one having those, gone through those different stages. I think a lot of people with similar upbringing to that of ours go through those the same, almost, or similar journeys. But I just wanted to sort of touch upon that because I think it's I think it's important to mention that this journey in identity has a lot of different stages, which is also what makes identity so difficult, specifically for or maybe more so for people that either came here at a very young age or are born and raised here with parents from another country.
Yeah, definitely.
How about yourself, Natu?
I'm gonna try also to manage time, but I mean, well, we're clearly born after Net. I'm born 94. I mean, shortly, just it's quite interesting to hear you guys because I'm just thinking. I mean, I was born in a community that was so strongly firm in its identity. I mean, even though I was born in an area where it's high percentage. I mean, almost 100% immigrant. I mean, people, groups from parts of the world that are, have similar stories, still going through conflict, so on and so forth. Still in that though, because there was such a strong community, it was inevitable for me to kind of to get a very strong Eritrean identity um, from the start. I mean, I remember just after I was born. I mean, a year or two after, we kind of went back and forth to Eritrea. Um, my sister was born, my brother was born, and then we stayed in Eritrea from like 97 to 99 ish. And I remember when the war started, my uncle went to the front line. I remember us visiting, although I was very small. I still remember visiting. And I remember, seeing people around me. Uh, I remember small things as like I remember the when the airplane got hit Al Asmara. I remember that, and I remember the sentiments in the street. I remember like the people coming together. I remember like that strong bond. Uh, people fighting for each other, fighting for to preserve its independence. Just as a fun story, as it explains, my parents' patriotism. We actually went and visited the airplane that crashed the day after because they crashed right outside of our village. So I have pictures of standing on it. I have souvenirs of the airplane itself at home. Because it was just like we're in it. And my parents had such a strong sentiment of we need to teach our children what Eritreanism is, what it means. So yeah, just shortly, I mean, it was inevitable for me to kind of, and then a lot of the work that Nadia did and other with her, creating youth organizations, activities around us that kind of gathered people my age. So for me, it wasn't that I didn't. I mean, I don't know if I went through an identity journey young. It was more that I had to defend, that I struggled with my identity because it was so strong, and I think other cultures kind of found it a bit too much. Because I remember you know it's, even other Africans. I mean, a lot of Arab. Uh, Instead of kind of, I mean, we're young at that age, but instead of kind of understanding, or because they're going through similar things, but uh, it was more that they went, offense and kind of try to poke and this and that, and and then at that time there was always news about Eritrea, very negative news. So I kind of spent my teenage years, especially, going on this like defense, you know, to kind of defend my Eritreanism, my Eritrean identity, my country, my people. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's very. I mean, it sounds different from what you guys went through, but um, I mean,
It's not really different though. It's not different. Maybe it was just it could be a bit of a different. You reminded me of this because I remember this um, when we have the show and tell things, and it's very common in elementary schools in the United States, where you bring something to show like an artifact or whatever. And I always brought things that represented Eritrea. So all my classmates were very. I mean, they knew that I was from Eritrea because I kept on showing things, especially that I was from Eritrea. Well, one kid, I remember him in a way to make fun of me. He was like Mexican American. He was like, yeah, you always talk about Eritrea, but Eritrea's not even on the map. Because Eritrea wasn't on the map at the time. It was like 1992, 93, 94, one of these years. So, of course, I went to the we have this big atlas in the classroom, and I drew in the Eritrean border on that map to be like, yeah, Eritrea is on the map. And that, of course, became a habit. I think many, many people used to do this. If they would come across a map in a book or whatever, and it didn't have Eritrea, we'd make sure to put in the border. I'm pretty sure my border included Bademe, but it wasn't like in a detailed border. It was just like a key shape, right? But yeah, it looks different, during different times, and for sure here in Sweden, with a lot of the type of negative press, and I'm sure that your struggle was very hard, right? It was not easy defending your right to be proud as an Eritrean. So I commend you for that, Nahai.
That is interesting because I think the negative picture is I think is stronger here in Sweden and than elsewhere. Because I remember my smaller brothers, their teachers would even bring that up, and I mean it's completely the wrong forum to even discuss that things. I mean they're going in elementary school and first to third first to fifth grade, which is strange. But that's something we actually need to discuss more about the prides and the struggles around one's identity.
definitely.
And also now we have given our small view for different journeys, while almost there's always a crossroad where everything meets. But we do have new generations that has come here as well. So I think we're closing in on the first episodes ending. But just to wrap it up, not to what can people expect? What are we gonna have?
I mean, coming forward, we're gonna be recording shows like this. We'll, as I said in the beginning, we'll try to do it as frequently as we can. If I'm not mistaken, we're doing twice a month right now, highlighting current topics, events, things that affect Eritrean youth today, and try to besides us for invite guests, people of interest, and hopefully, as you said, Tawi, a newer generation that could share their own journey in finding their Eritrean identity.
Nice.
Hopefully, we can also, pick up on the topic of what does it mean to be a representative of, a member of your community, because I think a lot of us, have found ourselves being in that position. Because of the type of things that like if let it be like negative or positive news about Eritrea, when you're in situations where you're the only Eritrean in the room, you're expected to be like this kind of representative of a whole people, or we find ourselves in other opportunities to different forums to also represent Eritrea. We have plenty of like artists, athletes, who have done such things, and we can definitely talk about those in the near future especially if the viewers want to hear about it.
So definitely, I mean, comment, Share your feedbacks, and see you guys next episode.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Joined by
Fatawi.
Rahel.
And Nathnael.
and we are here to tell you that Dmtsi Men'esay is back to be broadcasted every 2 weeks here on this channel. Please tune in, join us for our conversations. We look forward to having you.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and also give us feedback in the comment section.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And also please give us feedback in the comment section.
Like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to give us feedback in the comment section.
We will be broadcasting in both Swedish and English. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to give us feedback in the comment section.